So I'd like to introduce our second speaker this morning. Her name is Lynn Roblin. She's a registered dietitian and policy consultant for the Nutrition Resource Center. She's part of a team of the Healthy Kids Resource Center supporting the Healthy Kids Community Challenge. Lynn's area of expertise are in health promotion and food literacy. Her focus is on capacity building and knowledge exchange related to healthy eating and nutrition policies and programs at the local and provincial levels. Lynn's background includes work in public health at the local level and consulting to both provincial and federal governments on healthy eating programs and policies, including 2 previous Canada's Food Guides, which I did want to note, it is under review, so we may be seeing a new food guide that maybe it's more exciting in the next, I want to say year or 2, but don't quote me on that. Lynn has also co-authored several cookbooks, including Suppertime Survival and Dietitians of Canada's Great Food Fast. She has also been a founding member of the Halton Food Council and a board member of the Halton Fresh Food Box Program. She's graduated from University of Guelph with a Bachelor of Science in Applied Human Nutrition and a Master's in Human Kinetics. This morning, Lynn will be giving us an overview of planning effective school nutrition programs using research. And she'll be highlighting the more sensitive issues in nutrition education around food insecurity, the weight concerns in children, and ensuring programs are culturally sensitive. So please, let's give a warm welcome to Lynn. Just pop that in your pocket.
All right, try not to knock it.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, thank you very much, Christina, and thank you on behalf of the Healthy Kids Community Challenge, Hastings, Prince Edward County. So it's really exciting to be here. As Christina mentioned, I've been one of the 4 resource centers. The Nutrition Resource Center has been working on the challenge, so it's really nice to come to actually one of the communities and see how the events are rolling out and some of the activities that have been planned are occurring. So this afternoon, or this morning, I'm going to just provide you with more of a sort of the research around effective nutrition programs. So not as exciting as Andrew's presentation on the hands-on nutrition and food skills, which I passionately love. I do have 4 children, and they're all in their 20s now. And I always made sure that they knew how to cook. And out of my 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy, my boy turned out to be the one who was most inspired to be the cook in the family, motivated mostly by hunger, I believe. And he actually learned how to cook when he was about 5 or 6, cooking eggs, scrambled eggs, making toast. When I was 10, I was working outside of the home, and he would say, "Mom, what's for dinner?" And he'd turn the oven on and get things organized and wash the potatoes. And so he was always the one that was a real keener. And then as a teenager, got into all those cooking shows like Iron Chef and all of that. And when he went to university at Queen's University, managed to go on exchange to Manchester in the UK and made it a mission to go visit Jamie Oliver's restaurant. So you never know how kids are going to be inspired around food, and it really does start at home. So I'd like to just reiterate that, the passion that Andrew has shared with you, you can share with your own children in your own home and see how that goes. So before I get going on the research, I just wanted to talk about the Healthy Kids Community Challenge. And as Christina said, Hastings, Prince Edward counties is one of 45 communities to be part of this challenge. And the challenge is really about healthy kids. The outgoing message is really healthy eating, physical activity, and getting kids healthier behaviors. It is part of the Healthy Kids strategy. Oops, wrong way. And sorry, I put 4 themes on there. You're going to hear about the 4th theme later today. But the 3 themes, as you've heard already, are around healthy, active living, run, jump, play every day. Water does wonders, which was a theme to reduce sugar-sweetened beverages and increase water. And the 3rd one that we're actually embarking on right now is choosing to boost veggies and fruit. And that theme, there will be a new theme starting in the winter, so that's an exciting news. So as I mentioned, the Nutrition Resource Center is one of 4 resource centers charged by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care to support the challenge. So we work alongside the Physical Activity Resource Center, HC Link, and the Health Promotion Capacity Building, which is housed at Public Health Ontario. And they're looking at the evaluation of the projects. We're supporting the healthy eating side of things. HC Link has been very involved in helping support partnerships, partnership development, community engagement, and evaluating some of those community engagements. The Nutrition Resource Center is housed at the Ontario Public Health Association. This is an organization that's 60 years young. We support public health programs and services in the province. And we are funded by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. So the Nutrition Resource Center where I work, we have a team of registered dietitians that support programs and policies here in Ontario. Our expertise is, excuse me, I'm going to lose my voice. Expertise is in public health and evidence-based health promotion strategies, program planning, implementation, evaluation, and policies. So some of the projects that we've been working on have been advising the government on the menu labeling legislation. We've been obviously supporting the Healthy Kids Community Challenge, but we are also very involved in healthy food literacy projects that are looking at what is food literacy and how do we evaluate it. And those are just a few examples of the projects. Another project that we worked on is the Student Nutrition Program Guidelines. So for the school breakfast and snack programs, we've been the consultants working on those guidelines. And we're also available to the government to consult on things like PPM 150, which is the current school and beverage guidelines. And those obviously will be under review pending what happens with the new Canada's Food Guide. With regards to things that happen on the national scene, like Canada's Food Guide, we, like many other health professionals, are involved in providing comments and feedbacks on the Food Guide. As you heard earlier, I was actually involved in the development of 2 food guides already, so I'm not going to take Andrew to task for condemning the food guide, but really it is something that has progressed over the years. It started after the war in terms of what we Canadians need to eat to ensure they're getting the nutrients they need. And the latest food guide is still that basic framework to ensure that Canadians know how much food to eat to ensure they're meeting their nutritional requirements. No, it's not the easiest tool to use, and it's not the most friendly sometimes, but it is our basic core nutrition guidelines where all of our educational programs and policies are now hinged on. So we're really, really excited to hear, and unfortunately not like the US, we don't get a new food guide every 5 years. We tend to get one every 15 years, and yes, so I'm going back in time. I actually worked on the 1992 food guide where we took it from the 4 equal circles to the rainbow. And I think that, just looking at graphically representation of the food guide, the messaging had changed from the food groups, for example, are not necessarily equal. We need to put more emphasis on vegetables and fruit, for example. So, those communication tools, such as the visual graphic of a circle versus a rainbow, are really important. So we're really pleased to see that the new food guide is underway. We're hoping to see something in 2018. It will emphasize more plant-based diet, which is really great. It's going to, we hope, address the issue of sustainable diets as well. So eating what's better for people is also what's better for the planet. We're addressing issues, and not me, the federal government is working on this. I'm not actually working on this one, but addressing issues such as juice. Does it have a place in a healthy diet? Or is it more considered a sugar-sweetened beverage? So it's, or a sugary beverage, because there's no sugar added to it. It is naturally sugar. So, these are all the issues that are very important, and these are the kinds of issues that we would be responding to as dietitians. And also we're looking at a new national food policy from the federal government. So that's really exciting news. The federal Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada has been charged with coming up with a food policy for Canada. And this is really good news because we're looking at how we can sustain our Canadian food supply. How can we consider the needs of people who are food insecure? How can we increase access to healthy food? How can we promote more Canadian foods? So these are all issues that are very important policy-related decisions. So getting a little bit off track, but those are the kinds of things that I work on a day-to-day basis at the Nutrition Resource Center. So what we want to focus in on today is effective interventions to increase vegetable and fruit intake, specifically in children. And we know that fruit and vegetable intakes in Canada are actually going down. So we have a tool called the Canadian Community Health Survey where we track on an annual basis consumption levels. And looking at where we were in 2009, fruit and vegetable consumption peaked at 46% of people getting five choices a day. But that's peaked and it's been going down. And in Canada, recent studies showed that only 1 in 10 Canadian youth are meeting their fruit and vegetable target. And for children, that's 6 servings a day for children 9 to 13-year-olds and 7 to 8 per day for teens 14 to 18. In Ontario, we know that 43% of 12 to 17-year-olds consume vegetables and fruit 5 times or more per day. Now, I noticed Andrew had an interesting stat on his slides talking about in 2007, I believe, 65% of children were not meeting their fruit and vegetable target of 6 servings per day. And in BC, that has, they did a study there showing that approximately 85% of children are not meeting their fruits and vegetables per day. And it was regardless of socioeconomic status. So it was all children. So really our message now is we really need to target all children with a message to consume more vegetables and fruit. In Ontario, however, we do know when we look at food insecure households, we do know that food insecure households are not consuming fruit and vegetables 5 or more times a day, and that is significantly lower. So we do have some work to do here for sure, and recognize those families and households that are food insecure have real issues with access. So just before I move on to the studies, I want to just highlight beverage consumption in Canadian children and youth. And this goes along with the Water Does Wonders theme. And one of the reasons that was selected as a theme is as kids get older, their consumption of milk declines. Fruit juice remains around the same, but intakes of sugary beverages and soft drinks increase, particularly in the teenage years. And the concern with this is there is a link between sugary beverage and increasing weight in children. And beverages do make up a large part of the children's diet, 20 to 30%, 30% for the younger children. So the message is, that came out of the Water Does Wonders theme is water is the preferred choice for children, and whole fruits and vegetables are preferred over juice. So those are key messages that we want to keep going for the theme increasing vegetables and fruit. So, I'm going the wrong way here. So what are the most effective ways to increase vegetable and fruit consumption in children? We did a study at the Nutrition Resource Center last year looking at what the research said, and this was based on 8 high-quality systematic reviews. And we looked at studies that were, we looked at the intervention design, we looked at what happened in schools, what was most effective in school gardening programs, what was most effective at home, the impact of role modeling and character branding, and then how communities were connected. So in terms of interventions, The main message here is it takes a minimum of 12 months to make any changes to fruit and vegetable intake. And I'm sure Andrew can concur that, you know, having kids into a classroom once or twice is just the start of things. You need those ongoing, consistent messages to happen over years and years. And so this study was based on research studies, and they were all looking at multi-strategic studies that, or programs, interventions that happen in schools, homes, and the community. So they were more than one focused setting. In the school setting, what worked best was with the food service programs, and I know with a lot of our elementary schools, we actually don't have food service programs. We have school nutrition and snack programs. But they really focused on increasing access and availability of vegetables and fruit as a preference for these programs. They also looked at the variety. So the more variety the programs have, the higher the consumption of fruits and vegetables. And encouragement was also an important part of it. So so this might be in a cafeteria setting where the staff were encouraging students to choose vegetables and fruit. They may also have used posters or other incentives like stickers and information around why to choose fruits and vegetables. Oops. So in terms of the school again, the education part of as again we've heard from Andrew is so very, very important. The experiential learning part, positive reinforcement, goal setting, and problem setting were all really key. Having dietitians help to provide the program and advise on curriculum was really helpful. Hands-on outside activities such as gardening, taste testing, like we're going to do a little bit of that this afternoon. So really those hands-on activities were really important. And again, as Andrew has mentioned, all the curriculum connections that you could do were really important to increase vegetable and fruit intake. And then social marketing was also a key educational component, and I know in your packages that you've received for the fruit and vegetable campaign from Christina, we'll talk about school announcements, having posters, having social marketing. We're in an age of Twitter and Facebook, and so having all of those messages being consistent and using those in the school setting and also extending those out into the community. So with a gardening program, I don't know how many gardening programs you actually have going in here in your community, but the research supported community gardens that could be utilized in the summer months. So we know a lot of schools are sort of concerned about starting a garden when there's no one there to maintain them in the off-school season. The community gardens are really quite important in terms of increasing knowledge and preference for vegetables and fruit. We heard about kids not knowing that carrots and parsnips grow underground. We heard about kids actually planting fruits and vegetables, or fruits or vegetables, and learning how to actually take the harvest and make a meal with that, or a salad or something like that. The gardening programs actually had the greatest impact on increasing fruit and vegetable intake, particularly for vegetables. So that is one outcome that has been reinforced by the research. So that it is a really key, important part of that experiential learning. In terms of vegetables versus fruit, as I just said, the garden-based programming had the biggest impact on increasing vegetable intakes. Most of the studies we looked at actually looked at fruit intakes because kids are more familiar with fruits. They see them more often, they're easier to prepare. They can be served raw, and so can vegetables. But I think if you are starting to do programs in your schools, the focus really is on as much as possible on getting the vegetables used as examples and activities. And as I said earlier, due to the high sugar content in fruit juice, intervention should target the whole fruit and vegetables over the juice. So when you're talking about activities that go from school to home, again, looking at those lessons that can be effective, especially in families with younger children. Andrew talked about having recipes go home, fact sheets go home, activities that can go home. And if there's special situations such as low-income families or children with some particular health issues, you might need to bring in or have the connections with dietitians and other professionals in your community. And again, you need to target families where they come from. So depending on their background, it has to be tailored to their needs and meet them where they are. For example, talking about teachers' role in the schools with schools' lunches. Teachers' role is really to provide the nutrition messages and the activities in the schools and not really to police kids' lunches. Kids come with a lunch that's been prepared with their family and they don't have control over often what is in their lunches. So as you're trying to do these programs to increase their fruits and vegetable intake, you may see that they may not have those foods or they may have the packaged foods. And really you just have to meet the kids where they are, and the lesson planning is the important part. What kids bring, hopefully they will learn the messages and take those messages home to their parents, but we can't be guaranteed that they will have those foods available to them at home. So the home activities will be implemented along with school and community strategies. As I said, they should be family-focused strategies, homework, activities, and parents could be involved in those interventions. I really like the ideas that Andrew shared about the parent nights, bringing parents in to have a cooking session and those kinds of things where you can increase community connections. Back to role modeling here. So role modeling as parents and as teachers is really important, and also to have students. Some of the school programs where student peer leaders were involved helped increase vegetable and fruit intake. Having parent volunteers for your student nutrition programs or your cooking programs, if you're planning activities in the classroom, parents can be good role models. Again, emphasizing that the children are the ones doing the activities, not the parents. So the volunteers are there to support the setup of the programs, and the children are there to do the activities. At home, certainly as parents, you should be modeling healthy behaviors, looking at eating vegetables and fruit in front of your children. We've all heard about, we all don't like broccoli or whatever, but trying to increase a variety of fruits and vegetables at every meal and having people taste them. Sometimes it takes 8 to 10 times before a child will like a new food, and to not give up on kids. I remember when my children were young, I like to follow the rule, make dinner once. I don't believe that we should be catering to have a separate meal for every child, but having a variety of foods on the table. So if you had 2 or 3 different kinds of vegetables and different offerings, the children will learn to eat from what is offered. So there was a bit of research done on character branding. And as we saw with the packaging, there's packaging for unhealthy foods, but there's also some packaging that was tried with healthier choices, such as fruits and vegetables. So these Sesame Street characters were used on packaging, and that did increase willingness to try fruits and vegetables. They can also be used as a social marketing campaign. I know the Kingston Healthy Kids Community Challenge has created their own veggie and fruit mascots. There's Veggie Tales. There's another mascot that the Canadian Produce Marketing Association has, where he just is a costume you can rent, and it goes around to the schools, and you can encourage kids to have fruits and vegetables that way. In terms of branding unhealthy foods, that definitely can have a negative impact. Food product marketing tactics will increase intakes of unhealthy foods and will definitely influence children's selections and intakes of these foods. So, we have to be careful with character branding, but you have to think the way that we're approaching that in Canada is looking at policies to reduce the marketing of unhealthy foods to children. There was Heart and Stroke has some really good resources out that looked at how much marketing to children there was, and over 20,000 hits on some of the children's websites marketing unhealthy foods. So we really have to address that from a policy standpoint. So it's really good to see that federal government is addressing that issue seriously. So the key messages around vegetables and fruit were wanting your kids to reach for a healthy snack, making sure that the vegetables and fruit are in reach. So these are more the home messages. I know when my kids were little, I always had vegetables and fruit cut up and ready to go. The kids will always go for the easy choice. So if you have that platter of fruit or that platter of vegetables or even the carrots and celery cut up, they'll go for those before they choose another kind of treat. When they come home hungry, that's when they're going to eat them most often. Let your kids be the produce pickers. So I know when you take your kids shopping, that's something you can do, is let your children pick some of their favorite fruits and vegetables or something new. Trying something new once a week. Again, starting where the families are and encouraging that. So just a little bit about community partners, and Andrew's done a great job telling us what's happening in the London community. I know that you've got your community challenge going here, that you've made great connections with your schools and some of your community health centers. I wanted to give you an example of a community health center in Port Hope that's doing a great job, and just thinking outside the box in terms of how you can increase the healthy food programs in your area. So what Adam does is he has a community health center with a teaching kitchen, and he actually brings the kids in, classroom at a time, and sets up 6 stations to do the food tasting and food prep, and gives a chance for all the kids to try a new food. All of the recipes are based on vegetables and fruit. The parents come in as supporters, not, as I mentioned earlier, not to do the work, but to help the children know what the activity is. And so that's a really good example of how, if you don't have the wonderful services that Andrew has in London, that you can look at other partners in your community who, you talked about the Ys, there may be some community churches or other places where you could make some connections, and really finding the right people to help you run that program. If it can't happen in the school, can it happen in a community center? Can it happen in an after-school program? Those kinds of things. Also, food markets are really popular, and farmers markets right now. Those are some other areas where you can take kids on tours to local farms and things like that to increase awareness of foods. So just a summary of the research. Multi-component interventions with multiple strategies that are implemented in various settings are the most effective. And so that's the whole premise with the Healthy Kids Community Challenge, that it's not just done in the school. There is the social marketing side of things. There is the reaching out to the community for the various programs. So targeting specific messages, like having a vegetable and fruit at every meal, keeping that message constant. looking at whole vegetables and fruit instead of juice, looking at how you can connect your programs, your curriculum programs with your parents at home or their caregivers, and looking at how you yourselves can be positive role models and encouraging parents as well to do that. So in terms of sensitivities, some of the main concerns that I'm just going to touch on here are allergies, culture, socioeconomic status, and weight stigma. And you will be getting a copy of the slides here, and so I've just given you a link for one of the OFIA resources that actually touches on this quite well. So it's really important as teachers to be aware of these issues and to create supportive environments for children in their classroom. So the first issue is food allergies and intolerances. And I'm sure all of you have received some training on anaphylaxis and how you treat or deal with children in your schools that have this concern. We do have Sabrina's Law here in Ontario, so I'm sure all of your schools have guidelines for how you would address that in your school, whether you're having very strict policies around, for example, no nuts at school, or how children in your schools are being kept safe from being exposed to allergens. So it's really important if you are doing any cooking classes or lessons or food tastings or potlucks or whatever, just to make sure that you are aware of all of the food allergies that might be a concern for the children. And this is just a list of the common food allergies. We also have, aside from allergies, different people have different food, diets that they follow, whether it's gluten-free diets and things like that. So these are just good things to know, to be aware of before you start planning any food-related activities. And I just wanted to highlight two resources here. There's the Food Allergy Canada website that you could go to for information. And there's also a course for teachers on allergy awareness that you can look at as well. So I just want to touch on culture as well. And we have become a very multicultural society, and we all have different values and beliefs. Religious affiliations, and these all impact our food choices. So when children are at school, they may or may not be able to participate in a food-related activity depending on their background. So it's really just, again, important to keep that in mind, that culture really does influence who we are and what we eat. There may be some cultures or diets or where certain foods like milk products are not consumed. So it's important to respect those cultural practices. But it's also important to celebrate those as well. And so if you are planning activities for your schools, trying new recipes from different cultures, asking the children about the kinds of foods that they eat at home and the kinds of foods that they might want to share with their fellow students. In terms of dealing with lower income families, this is really, again, as I said, being very aware of children's, what they bring to school may be all they can bring. And you have to know that socioeconomic status influences households significantly. They may not have adequate money available to buy all of the healthier food choices that we would desire or we've talked about in our school programs. So it's just important to be cognizant of that. Fruits and vegetable programs should target all children and be inclusive, which is why the student nutrition programs are very good, because it's available to all students. And again, as I mentioned, it's not important not to be critical of children's food choices because they may not have any control over the foods they bring. Some strategies that were talked about by Christina is, looking at how can we increase access to fresh fruits and vegetables in communities, and we do have the food box program. I was part of the Halton Fresh Food Box program for many years, and it's a program that's available to all citizens in the community, and what it does is brings a food box to communities once a month. And what really helps that program is including recipes and tips for how to use the foods in those boxes. And that's a really good thing to have it around as well. And looking at local foods as a way to increase access to fruits and vegetables. Farmers markets aren't always the cheapest place to buy fruits and vegetables. Sometimes Farmers Gate is a better approach. And considering where those access points are for the children in your community. In terms of dealing with weight issues in the classroom, the big focus here is that weight is not a behavior, and trying to avoid any weight stigma or biases in schools. So weight bias is defined as negative weight-related attitudes, beliefs, assumptions, and judgments towards individuals who are overweight or obese. But it impacts individuals who have low weight as well as overweight. Weight bias is common in schools and can have adverse health effects, such as causing anxiety, stress, depression, and low self-esteem in children, and issues with body image. The stigma can result from bullying or inappropriate words or inappropriate name calling. And the stigma associated with weight may contribute more to the negative health than the actual excess weight. So some of the ways to avoid weight stigma and bias in schools are around education, policy, environmental, like making that a safe environment, no negative messaging, addressing bullying of kids when it happens, and looking at the resources that you're using. So I've linked this presentation from Shelley Russell from the University of Calgary, and she's provided some samples of some appropriate resources you might consider using in the classroom. And again, some other additional resources that you could look at is I've included here. So again, the Healthy Kids focuses on healthy behaviors, not weight specific. It's trying to help children be more active and eat healthier diets. It's addressing sleep and screen time. So the focus really for weight is really not to be discussed in the classroom. There are some, again, as I said, there's some really good resources here that you might want to check out on the weight biasing issue. So in your package, I'm just going to summarize here in a few minutes, but in your package I wanted to point out that you have a list of resources that will support increasing vegetable and fruit intake in children. And as I said, it's a comprehensive approach we're looking at, but these are resources specifically that you can use in schools. The two in the middle are both from the Bright Bites website, and I would encourage you to have a look at those. Those are simple activities that you can actually do in the classroom, and both of them focus in on increasing vegetable and fruit intakes in children. There's also a Veggie Mania kit that's mentioned to support increasing vegetable and fruit intakes, and that's from Ontario Agri-Food Education, which has now changed its name to AgScape. And then there's a guide from Durham which talks about setting up community gardens. So that's just a sample of some of the resources that I've collected for you to look at supporting your educational programs. I also wanted to mention, actually I forgot to mention in the gardening program, that there are 2 funds available if you're looking for additional funding. So it's under your student engagement and peer support. There's the Green Apple School program grants that Andrew mentioned earlier, and that's from Metro. And one that didn't quite make your list, but I can share that later with folks if they're interested, is the Whole Foods program that supports community school gardens, and it's called wholekidsfoundation.org. So there is a new grant proposal just came out. I think the deadline is in the end of October. So if you're looking at setting up any school garden type programs, to check out the Whole Foods program called Whole Kids Foundation. So the presentation that I did today was based on some of the research that we had done, as I said, at the Nutrition Resource Center. And we ended up doing a webinar on this topic called Helping Kids Eat Vegetables and Fruit. We do have that as a webinar that you can go to the Nutrition Resource Center and download that and listen to that presentation. We also recently did a food literacy programming for children webinar, which focused in on the You're the Chef program that Niagara Health Department and York Region Health Department both offer. So they've got really good examples in that webinar of setting up a program in your schools. And I also have Adam Hudson, who I spoke about earlier, who did the Port Hope program. He talks about setting up his cooking stations and his cooking programs, and he talks about what students are available to do at what ages and things like that. And in terms of the research that I based my presentation on today, you can download 2 reports there, Effective Interventions to Increase Vegetable and Fruit in School-Age Children, and also a report on some of the community resources that would support increasing fruit and vegetable programs in your community. And then we also did a review of food skills programming for newcomers to Ontario, and so that report is on the Nutrition Resource Center website as well. So here's my contact information if you require any further information. I really want to point out the bottom resource, and I believe I put this on your handout, is our resource, Nutrition Resource Center Navigator, nutritionrc.ca. If you go there, you can search all kinds of different resources that will support your work in promoting healthy eating and nutrition. So I've just got a couple slides just to remind you of what's happening here in Hastings and Prince Edward counties. And that's just to remind you about the pledge. And I'm sure Christina will want to get up and say a few more words about that. But before that, I just wanted to also show you that there is a video that Christina and her team have worked on that really talks about the approach of the Healthy Kids strategy being more than just a school setting. It's a multi-stakeholder engagement by communities, by schools, by business and industry. And I really just have a look at that video. It'll really help summarize what's happening in your community today. All right, thank you very much.